Hello and a very warm welcome to a special edition of BattleCry. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Disruptive technology is changing the rules of modern warfare. And drones are a prime example of how new technology is changing the rules of the game. India is embracing drone warfare to strive to be a major player in the world. From long-endurance, high-altitude surveillance drones to Kamikaze drones to loitering munition, where both skill and scale, India could truly be a game changer. On this special broadcast, we have a special story for you. We talk about the Indian Army's drone battle school successfully putting together a weapon that soldiers need in the battlefield today to destroy enemy tanks, enemy VAVPs or vital assets and vital points entirely out of their own resources. The FPV drone with anti-tank payload. The FPV or first-person view drones with their anti-tank munition. Army's Rising Star Drone Battle School has already fabricated close to 100 drones within the Army family, conceptualizing it to getting it all the mandatory clearances to using it in battlefield or in test conditions. Sources in the Army tell India Today that the Army had total control over build quality, component integration and real-time modification as per the Terminal Ballistics Research Laboratory guidelines and of course end-user requirements. That's the Indian Army. Aspects like structural integrity, weight distribution, flight dynamics, they've been optimized, the Army tells me, to ensure that this drone is highly maneuverable and efficient for deployment in the battlefield. Now, there are built-in systems to prevent accidental detonation during transport or handling. So, is this truly an example of one, Atmanirbhar Bharat and defense? Make in India, made by the Army. It is low cost. The components are made in India, most of them anyways. No components are from an expansionist neighbor to the east and the north. The systems are all Army's electronic and mechanical engineers putting it together, and they tell me this cannot be hacked. It can of course easily be upgraded depending on the demand. Volumes can be scaled up as and when required. The Army is very proud of its successful results of the first of its kind FPV drone project, and they're calling it a game-changing force multiplier in modern tactical engagement. So let me tell you a little more about these hunter-killer drones or the Kamikaze drones. The FPV or first-person view system is a real-time video transmission to the operator, and that enables precision guidance, manual control, and this vision comes via the FPV goggles or a ground control station. So you can see where your loitering munition is going and guide it to its target. So it's Kamikaze loitering or suicide loitering munition. Capability is designed for one-time hit. The drone crashes into the target and detonates the warhead. It's extremely suitable to take out an enemy tank or their armored personal carriers or any vehicle, a high-value vehicle that's moving in your direction. The anti-tank warhead is equipped with a shape charge or a heat warhead. It's capable of penetrating armored vehicles and fortifications like we've seen in the Russia-Ukraine conflict or in the Azerbaijan-Armenia war. It's man-portable, so it's light. It can be rapidly launched, it's lightweight and has a compact design. That's one great advantage. It can even be used in mountains, forests and hilly terrain. It can be launched either from hand or a small portable platform. It's ideal for an infantry unit or the special forces in combat. It's highly maneuverable. It's agile in close quarter combat environment. It can navigate through narrow spaces. It can enter a bunker through that small slit and detonate inside. The range and endurance. Now that is a challenge at times. In some instances, 5 to about 10 to 15 kilometers, depending on the payload, depending on the battery. Flight time, usually between 10, 15, can be extended to 20 minutes, depending on where it's flying, what's the payload. But usually it flies so fast that it's likely or expected to hit the target in the first 5 to 10 minutes of its flight. Another advantage, stealth, speed, low radar signature or almost zero radar visibility. High speed during terminal dive to minimize a reaction time by the adversary. And a huge advantage is it's cost effective. Extremely cheap, a couple of $100 versus a high value target like a tank that could cost millions of dollars. And it's much cheaper compared to an ATGM or an anti-tank guided missile. Jamming, now that is an issue that needs to be dealt with, but then technology is being made in such a way to resist electronic warfare. But this is an idea whose time truly is here. When you look at the nature of warfare and conflicts across the world, drones are truly turning the tide in conflicts. Take, for example, the Azerbaijan-Armenia war in 2020 for Nagorno-Karabakh area. Now, the Israeli Harop drones and the Turkish Shahid 136, the Kamikaze drones, they were very, very important drones used to take out Armenian air defense, artillery, and tanks. Talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine here converted commercial drones into kamikaze drones. And these homemade drones, at times, they were modified with IEDs or improvised explosive devices. Russia used the Iranian-made Shahid 136 drones in this conflict. These drones were used to strike Ukraine's power grid or military bases or their strategic vital assets and vital points. Let's talk about the Israel-Hamas war. Now, in this conflict, Israel used drones to target Hamas infrastructure. Now, they used drones for surveillance. They used drones for pinpoint accuracy strikes. Hamas, in fact, developed its own kamikaze drones like the Shahab UAV. Hamas used drones for reconnaissance and for bombing, whether it was October 7 terror attack or even subsequently to target the Israeli tanks and their armored and mechanized columns that were moving into Gaza. In the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukrainian forces successfully used the FPV or the first-person view kamikaze drones targeting Russian tanks with pinpoint accuracy. What's been a very exciting journey for soldiers and students alike in India is the fact that Indian Institute of Technology engineering students collaborated on this project right from the drawing board to battlefield deployment. And it's happening in a record time. This is truly something to be proud of and a sign perhaps of times to come. Joining me on this India Today special broadcast are Air Marshal Anil Khosla, former Vice Chief of Air Staff. Also with me is Group Captain Augustine Vinod, both former fighter pilots, and Group Captain Vinod's also a drone pilot and expert. Air Marshal Khosla, I want to begin by asking you, sir, India has showcased, whether it's swarm drone technology or loitering munition, DRDO's Nagastra 1, for example, all of that technology has been showcased. But does production scalability remain a challenge for us? And what steps should the Indian defense ecosystem take in your appreciation, whether it's DRDO, private firms, army, to match perhaps the rapid innovation cycle that we've seen in Ukraine, for example, or in other countries, to make this Make in India project successful and scalable?
Yeah, you're very right. The modern warfare is actually all unmanned platforms warfare. That's where it is heading with MUMT concept, that is manned-unmanned teaming. And in air warfare also, the drones are coming in a big way. And drones we use in a very, very generic term. The drones, small drones to big drones to quadcopters to fixed wing with very long range endurance, with heavy payload to small payloads, tactical to micro to, so drone is a very, very generic term. But the fact which you brought out is very, very relevant. One is the utilization of drones in the warfare. And second is having a developed ecosystem of your own for self-reliant and indigenization, which is a very, very essential. And this ecosystem has worked very well in this case, which you highlighted, where the user, the developer, and the manufacturer all have coordinated with each other, and it has been a success story. So, similar thing we need to develop into our ecosystem of other drone systems, which so far we have been lagging actually with the DRDO doing some research, and some of the projects have been lagging. But now with the private sector also coming in, I think it is picking pace, and also
Okay.
the government which has been given is making it pick up pace.
Group Captain Vinod, is this exactly what our armed forces need? From the drawing board to the end user, technology that's needed in the battlefield today, delivered in months and not years.
Absolutely. In fact, 6, 7 months ago, from the Rising Star Brigade, one of the brigadier contacted me, and probably next time with his permission, I'll tell you his name as well. So I want to believe I had a little bit of hand in this. We submitted all that we had pro bono to them with with permission to go ahead with whatever they want to do with the design as well as the um, ability to take it further. Be that as it may, Gaurav, but let's come to the technicality of this whole thing. See, in a anti-tank munition, you have you've seen traditional anti-tank munitions, which are A, extremely expensive,
ATGMs,
B,
yes.
not only ATGMs, even the guided missiles, which were initially employed during the Ukraine-Russia war, which found its way to the. I mean, they were sold in black market, and they were found, I believe, in Mexico and Colombia as well. But if you compare that with this particular weapon, which you're showing on the screen, and that is behind me, there is a lot of difference technically. First and foremost, it is like a loitering munition looking for the target. B, the speed is variable. C, you don't have to have the target info when you launched. You don't have to look at the target when you launched. You can launch it, then look for the target. And most importantly, and very good thing that TBRL, with the capability of TBRL, what they have done is to remotely arm the weapon, which in Ukraine-Russia war, we saw in some cases that it took out the launcher themselves because that kind of safety protocol was not in place.
Correct.
So once India does something, we do it properly, be with a lot of safety in mind, so that the frat is eliminated or reduced because us being firstly careful country and be a democracy. But what
Absolutely.
really brings to fore, Gaurav, is the survivability of the tank has been in question for some time now. If you look at most advanced tanks also today, they are in the Ukraine-Russia war we've seen, they are working with some kind of a tent on top of their head.
Yeah, or a cage.
It's
But I'll
like a
come to that
house.
aspect. Yeah, I'll come to that aspect in just a moment. For the moment, I want to stay on the Kamikaze drones, Air Marshal Khosla, that offer perhaps that cost asymmetry also, which is so significant. A couple of $100 for a drone or this loitering munition, taking out a multi-million-dollar tank. But then it also requires mass deployment for impact. Now, in a country like India, looking at both our borders, how should India balance investment in these low-cost systems versus traditional platforms like, if we were to talk about artillery, our ATAGS, ATAGs, or fighter jets, or, there are budget constraints, there are diverse threats, state actors, non-state actors. So are we to invest more in drones now, sir?
As I said, the drone warfare is the future of warfare, and we need to invest and do a balanced act. It's not question of either one or the other. You need both because both have their advantages, both have their disadvantages, both have their capabilities. So you have to balance out in terms of numbers and money, as you said. And this FPV or loitering ammunition or kamikaze drones, the suicidal drones, these are a family of drones which are low cost, high yield options, high impact options. So the effect created by these is much more than at the lower cost. These are obviously low-cost options for countries with low budget, which has got asymmetry with the enemies, and also these weapons can be used in an urban sort of warfare or terrain which is difficult. So, like in our scenario, all these things exist. So, to my mind, we need to invest them, and have a large number of these available with us, and that too indigenous.
Oh, perfect point. In fact, I'm just coming to some of these points you've raised because the diverse battlefield that India fights in. But Group Captain, is India on the right track? Take the product, test it, use it. In case there are niggles, sort them out, keep upgrading, keep improving. And doesn't that help the domestic industry and the nation's growth story in defense manufacturing? Will a story like this enthuse more players to invest? And does that look good for India's drone industry?
You got it right on the money, Gaurav. Three aspects I want to cover. Point number one, this is just the beginning of we breaking off from other shackles of import. So this is just the start. In fact, with this as the stepping stone and an example where the fleur-de-lis or fleur-de-lis, whether you're English or French as you pronounce it, the two end-up armored brigade from Meerut has done, is something that will probably be a test case for others to follow to indigenize many other weapon systems, which I have strongly felt even when I was informed to not to buy, but to go the indigenous or in-house route because we have such brains available within the uniform. That's point number one. Point number two, Gaurav, is this particular weapon has the great limitation in terms of video feedback. So you can fly it, say, 5, 6, 7 kilometers with no problem. But the moment you go into dive, you will lose the video feedback. So unless you don't have the video, the FPV goggle wearer, who's also the pilot, it doesn't have the video feedback. He will not be able to execute an attack. So 90% of these drones, when they go into the attack mode, they lose the video feedback. So what do you have to do? You'll have to have a relay drone in place, which Ukraine did it through is the relay network which Elon Musk provided, which also
Yes.
probably I think went away when Trump came into power. After that, you would have seen this particular attack profile sort of diminish. So that shows us that there is a great amount of limitation when you employ such weapons. Therefore, M. Marshall's point of having a mix. So mix is a good thing. A third and very important aspect, Gaurav, is the non-state actor and
Yes.
countries like Pakistan, which cannot invest in heavy equipment, are likely to go towards this, or pivot towards this kind of solution. Us having this kind of solution will put fear in God when they want to use it because we also have it. B, we also know that how are they going to employ it, and C, and most importantly, that if they launch 50, we will have the capability to launch 500 against them. That will deter them from using it in the tactical battle area. So it's like nuclear weapon. Both of you have it, but both of you don't use it because both of you know that if I use it, it is going to, finally kill everything in its path. So these are three major issues I thought I'll flag.
Oh,
Definitely,
absolutely.
we're definitely a stepping stone towards Atmanirbhar and doing it in-house, but an extremely hamstrung when it comes to the final attack profile. You need to have the line of sight, which you will not have in the final process of impact. That reduces the range to 100, 200 meters. Will you take a soldier with an FPV goggle unprotected within 100, 200 meters of a
Then
tank?
he
A
becomes
tank will take
vulnerable.
him out in no time. So
Oh,
these are few
absolutely.
technical glitches. Over to you.
Absolutely. But we've seen what's happened in the Azerbaijan-Armenia war, and how Armenia's advantage with tanks was neutralized by Azerbaijan's tanks, and that's something that's been talked about extensively over the past several years, or the FPPs that were used by the Ukrainian forces against the mighty Russians. Now, Air Marshal Khosla, from the Russia-Ukraine war to the Azerbaijan-Armenia war, In your appreciations, what's the biggest message of drones in warfare? Cheaper than ATGMs, cheaper than loitering munition, but as Group Captain Vinod pointed out, has certain restrictions. How can India overcome these niggles or shortcomings and then prepare better for our scenario?
Yeah, so these wars which you mentioned, the other Azerbaijan and Armenia war is considered at, war of drones. That is where the drones viability was highlighted. And now Russia-Ukraine war, both sides are using drones. Even in Middle East, Israel-Gaza war also, the drones are being used from both sides, the Iranian drones as well as Israeli drones. So, as I said earlier, the drone warfare is picking up. So it is drones, and then counter drone is also industry is also picking up. Now, if you see the recent news, the Americans have, it's a recent news 3 days back, where the high power microwave system they have used inducted, and so the counter drone industry is also picking up along with the drone industry. Uh,
Okay.
so other example is so one is the US example. The second example is Russia. Because of the jamming and interference, they have used a fiber optic cable. Like the captain was telling that
Yes.
you lose the control, or you lose the line of sight, or you lose the feed. What happens? So they used a fiber optic cable tethered to the drone, a very lightweight, and so that it allows you. And it's an innovative way of using it. So this warfare is evolving over the time, and it has got a lot of flexibility. It provides a lot of flexibility in terms of payload which it can carry, the kind of non-reliance on navigation system which can be jammed. Uh, in terms of choosing your target in the middle of the flight. So it gives you a lot of tactical flexibility, and this warfare is evolving over the time and is going to continue to evolve into a big affair. One more point, I'll take 30 seconds more.
Of
What is
course.
happening in these wars is, what is the action which you're taking, seeing with the drones is two. One is it's not a full-fledged high-tempo operations which are going on. These are skirmishes which are going on. One person does an attack, a swarm attack on one of the industry or power grid. The other one retaliates. So this is a boxing match sort of thing which goes on. And obviously, it's a cheaper option. So it's not a full-fledged high-tempo operations. To conduct full-fledged high-tempo operations, you need all elements of warfare
Yes.
integrated that you can conduct that.
That's a good point you make there, sir. Absolutely. And Group Captain Vinod, if we were to talk about India's counter-terror operations, for example, where terrorists may be hiding either in a dense jungle or in caves or inside a dhok south of Pir Panjal, do these armed drones play a role there for that, just for that kill impact, enter a bunker, a sangad, and then detonate? Or will endurance be an issue in high altitude?
Absolutely good point. In fact, FPV drones have very limited endurance. And especially when you have a payload on it, it is like, you'll not believe it, it is as low as 3 to 4 minutes. At the most, you can stretch it to 7 minutes, nothing more. And with
Yes.
the point about Marshall brought about how optical fiber cables were used to overcome the limitations of line of sight or jamming issues. Even that had a lot of limitations in terms of slack. So when you have slack, it is running on the ground. Secondly, you can't fly it through the way we are showing on the screen, where it is going through the trees and stuff like that. So it has great amount of limitations when it comes to employment. And like correctly, Marshall brought out that it in a shoot and scoot operation like this, or when the enemy is retreating, or few elements of the enemies are retreating, probably that is the place where you can use it. Otherwise, in a proper tactical battle area, in a breakout operations, what kind of utility will this particular weapon have is a very big question, and I have no doubt that the employment of this weapon in such a scenario is going to be extremely limited. But that is not the point we are discussing. We are discussing that from the time to conceive the idea to the time to be executed, it took less
Yes.
than 6 months. We didn't have to go outside and buy, and this is going to be a stepping stone towards indigenizing everything, probably in house within Army, Navy, and Air Force. So that is something
And you
which we
can
are discussing,
scale
and
it
that
up.
is
You can
something
scale it up
is yes,
whenever you
and
want.
that is something that gives me really goosebumps, Gaurav. We should go for it.
It indeed does. Last 30 seconds before I let you go, Marshal Khosla, when you look at India's adversaries on either border, how do you assess India using our drones? How do you assess China using its drone power and India's current capabilities?
Yeah, so I'll start with China. China's philosophy is no contact warfare. So that is why if you see they have invested heavily into long range weapons, second artillery, they have put it as a separate service. They have added the missile arsenal by thousands. And second is they've invested heavily into unmanned aerial platforms, not only aerial platforms in all the domains, surface,
Including undersea, yes.
undersea, subsurface. So they are invested heavily into unmanned platform. I had gone to Juhai Air Show. Believe me, you take one step and you saw 3 or 4 different types of drones, as I enumerated earlier, from fixed wing to rotary wing to small to large. So they are really heavy into this thing. Even the Taiwan issue, if you remember the discussion which took place between USA and China, or the disagreement, one of the philosophies they said was that unmanned platforms, we will not let the Chinese forces come into the near Taiwan. Whereas the
Yes.
China said, we have more number of drones, more number of unmanned platforms, and we have better quality. We will not let you come into that area. So these are war of words which took place about 5 or 6 months back. So
Yes.
China is going to use the drones in a big way. Our numbers at the moment are limited. We need to go in a much larger number in terms of quantity and capacity both.
Both in terms of quality, quantity, we need to scale up in a big way. But a very important first step has been taken. Air Marshal Khosla and Group Captain Vinod, as always, for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. On BattleCry, we'll be tracking this story very, very closely. Well, that is all we have time for on this special edition of BattleCry. Many thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with more military hardware that's truly a game changer. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.